Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
Sophia had accidentally stepped into a little pit in the sand, so she had been startled and couldn't help exclaiming loudly. Arthur looked at the slender, mesmerizing girl under the dim lights, and he found that she was like a little pixie with her long hair fluttering against the breeze. Her skin-tight dress accentuated her slim figure, and her laughter was exceptionally crisp and melodious. She was just like a playful little child. He stood under the railing and was shrouded in darkness. His long eyelashes masked the deep look in his eyes. The way he looked at Sophia was quite rare on his face, and he was fully focused on her. There were rarely any women who could hold his attention for so long. Furthermore, he scoffed at wasting his time and effort on any woman. Unexpectedly, though, this woman here seemed to have cast a spell on him and triggered something different within him. As soon as he realized that he had been staring at her for quite some time, his generally inflated sense of self-esteem deterred him from continuing to behave this way. He turned around and decided to head back first. However, at that moment, there was a loud yell from behind him once again, "Ah!" The tide had come in suddenly, and Sophia, who had been strolling close to the shore, was swept into the sea by the large waves. "Sophia!" Arthur instantly rushed toward the beach, and he ran with all his might toward the girl struggling in the sea. "Stretch out your hand to me," Arthur hollered at her anxiously. She quickly stretched out her hand and grabbed his hand. Instantly, she felt a huge force drag her out of the sea. At that same moment, there was another large wave that swelled up and pushed her forward. She felt the force and was pushed straight into Arthur's arms. The mighty force caused her to stumble forward and push Arthur to the ground as she ended up atop him. The seawater surged and hit both of them repeatedly. Fortunately, the danger had been averted, but this man, who was usually quite fastidious about hygiene, was now half soaked in seawater and covered in sand. His thick, luscious dark hair was met with the same fate too. As for Sophia, she was in a similar state. She was drenched from the neck down and her dress was dripping wet. She was covered in sand and her long hair was dripping with water. Furthermore, to add to her flustered situation, she realized that she was pressing against him at that moment. "Are you an idiot?" Arthur chided her angrily for not realizing that it was dangerous at night as the tides came in. "I'm sorry." Sophia's face flushed bright red, and she realized that he was quite right. "How long are you going to continue clinging on to me?" Arthur heaved a sigh, looking quite resigned. She hurriedly got up from her position on top of him, and she quite kindly stretched out her hand to help him up. She felt very bad upon seeing his expensive shirt dripping wet. As for Arthur, he found the wetness of his shirt against his skin quite unbearable as soon as he got up from the ground, so he instantly unbuttoned his shirt with his slender fingers. Meanwhile, Sophia was busy flicking off the sand on her body, and subsequently, she lifted her head. Oh my gosh! Why did he take off his shirt? At a glance, his perfect figure was completely showcased under the illumination of the street light by the side. The skin on his body was as pale as the skin on his face, and he looked like a perfect sculpture standing there. His clavicle was prominent, and the shape of his neck was perfect. Besides, his pectoral muscles and his abs were noticeable. His shiny leather belt glistened against his black pants, and Sophia was astounded by what was in front of her. This was the most perfect male figure that she had ever laid eyes on. "Are you done ogling?" Arthur held his wet shirt and kept his eyes on the woman who was staring at him unblinkingly. That was why he realized exactly how long she kept her eyes on his body. She hastily turned around and had her back facing him. At that moment, he could only see the tips of her ears turn red instantly. He frowned slightly and strode ahead to head back to the villa. As for Sophia, she quickly raced after him and her eyes landed on his back once again. He was well built and his back muscles were perfectly formed. He had a perfect figure that looked quite powerful. As he moved forward on his slender, long legs, the elegance he exuded was not even seen in a professional model. She flushed bright red at the sight of that. And she thought, I've never experienced walking along the beach late at night with a man. They arrived back at the villa and quickly went back to their rooms to take a shower. She decided that from now on, she would stay put inside the villa to avoid creating trouble for him. Night had fallen at the port and there were other guests arriving. There was a girl who walked out of the cabin, and she looked about 25 years old. She was charming, quite enchanting, very pretty, and she behaved graciously too. There was a man in his 50s awaiting her arrival as she smiled and greeted him, "Dad. You're finally back. Come on over and let me take a good look at you." The man scrutinized her from top to bottom with a smile on his face. "You've become much prettier than before. Time flies. I haven't met Elliot at all for the past 12 years, and I can't believe that our first encounter after so long would be at his wedding." The girl spoke up, slightly dejectedly. "You should go and greet the future young mistress of the Presgrave family." The old man spoke calmly. "What sort of girl is she?" "As of now, we're not too familiar with her. The only thing known is that she's the only candidate for the position of young mistress of the family with the seal of approval from the old madam. It was her mom who created this opportunity for her." The old man spoke with a deep look in his eyes. "So if it wasn't for her mother sacrificing her life to save old Madame Presgrave, she wouldn't have had the chance to become the young mistress of the family, huh? She bore Elliot a son 5 years ago. From the look of things, she's not a girl to be taken lightly. She's 25 years old, so she's about the same age as me. Perhaps we can become best friends." The old man glanced sideways at his daughter. Meanwhile, she had her eyes on him too, and they seemed to be communicating silently about something that had to be kept a secret. "Don't let me down in the future." He patted her on the shoulders. "I definitely won't let you down." She spoke confidently and nodded firmly. Subsequently, she revealed a pained smile. "It has been so many years. I wonder if Elliot remembers me. Spare some time tomorrow to meet him and say hi." The night skies were pitch black by then, and the entire island descended into silence. The next morning, the rays of sunlight hit the white bedsheets, and Anastasia snuggled into her husband's arms and wanted to have a sleep in. However, Harriet had organized a tea party at 10 o'clock, so Anastasia had to attend it. Anastasia had to dress up and put on makeup for the event, so that would require some time too. However, Elliot had not behaved himself the night before, and so she didn't get much sleep. Elliot kissed her on the forehead sympathetically. "Get some more sleep. I'll explain to Grandma about the tea party." "How are you going to explain things?" Anastasia supported her chin with her hand and asked with a smile. "As long as I tell her that I was the one who caused you to wake up late, she would naturally be understanding of the situation. She wouldn't blame you." Elliot had a wicked smile on his face as he spoke. Anastasia reached out and covered his lips with her hand. "Stop that nonsense. I would be so embarrassed in public if you actually said that." He held her hand and kissed the back of it. "Okay. You've got some more time left, so get some sleep." By then, Anastasia no longer had the urge to sleep, so she decided to take a nap later in the afternoon. He had his arms around her and his dark eyes were tender and loving. He seemed to be admiring a perfect art piece under the early morning rays. Her tousled hair was very seductive to him, and he couldn't help being enchanted by her. She was also checking him out with a tilt of her head, and she reached out to stroke his cheek before lovingly planting a kiss on his forehead. Time to wake up, honey. However, Elliot pulled her back into his arms. Let me continue hugging you for a bit longer. At that moment, Anastasia had no choice but to put her head on his chest silently as she listened to his heartbeat. They basked in the morning sun and enjoyed this moment of peace together. The tea party was ready at about 10 o'clock in the morning. The female members of the extended Presgrave family arrived before the scheduled time. They were all dressed to the nines, and they chatted amongst themselves amicably. Anastasia's makeup was delicate and proper. She was dressed in an elegant earth-toned maxi dress with her hair coiffed up, and she carried a dainty little bag. Adriana kept her company as they walked out of the villa together. Elliot also left to find Jared. He planned to take Jared out to sea today because he had promised Jared to go deep-sea fishing with him. Elliot had also invited Nigel and Arthur along. Several other younger males of the Presgrave extended family were invited too. He was ready to relax and enjoy himself. Elliot made his way toward the villa Jared was staying at as he listened to the human relations manager report on the situation with their guests. Suddenly, there was a soft female voice that rang out, "Elliot." Elliot lifted his head and turned in the direction of the voice. There was a slight smile in his eyes as he spoke, "Lorelei, you're back." Lorelei was one of Elliot's childhood companions, and they had grown up together. "I can't believe that you're able to recognize me. I'm so happy about this. I thought that you would no longer remember me because I've grown up and my looks have changed." Lorelei walked over from the tiny pathway by the forest, and she reached out to tidy her curly, long hair, fluttering in the breeze. "Congratulations on your marriage. I'm very happy to see you back here for my wedding." Elliot nodded with a smile. "I would like very much to meet your wife, the future young mistress of the family." There was a look of admiration in her eyes as she spoke. "You'll love her." After Elliot said that, he turned to the human relations manager and said, "You can go and deal with your work first." Lorelei couldn't help mentioning again, "Elliot, we've not seen each other for at least 12 years, right? You haven't changed much at all in my eyes, and you're still as handsome and charming as before. You've changed a lot, though. The scrawny young girl in the past is now a pretty little lady." Elliot was quite pleased. "Congratulations, Elliot, for gaining such a great wife and an adorable son. I heard that his name is Jared, right?" she asked with a smile. "Yes, his name's Jared, and he's 5 years old. I'm so keen to meet your son. I heard that he's the exact replica of the young you. I must say, I had a deep impression of you when you were a kid." Lorelei's smile widened. Nearby, Katrina was taking a walk, and she strolled past the two. She saw from afar that Elliot was taking a walk with a fashionably dressed young girl. She noticed they were full of smiles as they chatted with each other, and she couldn't help feeling jealous. At the same time, though, she revealed a mocking smile on her face. Is Anastasia aware that her husband is currently having a great time chatting with another girl? Katrina took out her cell phone and inched closer to secretly snapping a photo of them. Subsequently, she saw the girl look on as Elliot left. That girl remained in the same spot for quite some time before finally retracting her gaze, and clearly, there was a yearning look in her eyes. Ha! Anastasia hasn't even married Elliot yet, but her husband is already flirting with another woman. Katrina's intent was to show this video to Anastasia and then take a good look at Anastasia's expression. The tea party was held in a very luxurious and elegantly decorated courtyard. There were long crystal tabletops full of dainty snacks and drinks. It seemed that every female in the extended Presgrave family was in attendance. Harriet sat in the center of the room, and there was an empty spot right next to her. Just then, Anastasia made her way inside from the side door of the garden. All of the ladies turned their heads in her direction. As Anastasia approached them, The womenfolk greeted her respectfully, Mrs. Presgrave. Anastasia graciously nodded in acknowledgement as she went up to Harriet's side. Harriet reached out and held Anastasia's hand to lead Anastasia to the seat next to her. Mrs. Presgrave has dressed up so prettily today. She's such a beauty. One of the females in attendance praised Anastasia immediately. I heard that Mrs. Presgrave is very talented. She has obtained a lot of prizes and tokens of achievement. Yeah, that's right. Her masterpieces are worth a fortune right now. I think she must not have time for work after the marriage. From now on, our entire family will be led by Mrs. Presgrave. Harriet noticed that everyone was fawning over Anastasia, and she brushed them off by waving her hands. That's enough. We're family here, so let's just talk about the usual family matters. Hey! I heard that Lorelai is back. Why isn't she here at the tea party today? One of the middle-aged women asked the elegantly dressed woman across from her. Lorelai will be here shortly. The woman was Lorelai's mom. I heard that Lorelai has achieved so much while overseas and she's great in her field. Not only has she obtained a degree, but her job is mainly in finance too. She has done well. You're too kind. She's just an ordinary girl. Harriet was slightly surprised, so she asked, Lorelai is back? I haven't seen her for quite some time now. She remained overseas for the past 12 years and never came back. It's rude of her to not come back often to see you, old Madam Presgrave. Kendra spoke up guiltily. It's fine. The most important thing is that the kids do well in their field. Harriet brushed her off by waving. Anastasia heard them discussing another girl, so she listened silently. She reckoned that a girl brought up in the Presgrave family would definitely be an outstanding individual. After Anastasia got to know the Presgrave family better, she realized that they maintained a very strict family hierarchy and that they placed importance on the education their children received. At the same time, in the direction of the side door, there was a figure that walked in. It was a fashionably dressed and elegant girl. Anastasia lifted her head and noticed that the girl was stunning and elegant. She resembled an elegant swan. Wow! Lorelai has changed so much. She has become so pretty, someone exclaimed. The Presgrave family is full of beauty indeed. Lorelai lifted her head and glanced at the girl next to Harriet. That was the woman Elliot was about to marry, and she had a simple dress on. She appeared quite elegant, and her luscious black hair, which was swept to the side, accentuated her delicate features. Her eyes were quite attractive with a clear look in them. The girl that Elliot is about to marry is indeed exceptionally stunning. There was a slightly complicated feeling that welled up within Lorelai. I'm sorry for being late. Lorelai finished saying that and headed toward Harriet. Grandma. Lorelai, you've grown into such a beautiful girl. Come on over and sit by my side. Coincidentally, there was another empty spot next to Harriet, so Lorelai took a seat next to Harriet and greeted Anastasia. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Presgrave, I'm Lorelai. Nice to meet you, Anastasia greeted Lorelai with a smile. Look at them. With these two beautiful ladies in attendance, we're insignificant next to them, one of the women said with a smile. Instantly, the entire room erupted into laughter while Anastasia and Lorelai revealed shy looks on their faces. Subsequently, the atmosphere of the room became less tense. As everyone chatted about the past, suddenly, someone piped up, I remember Lorelai and Elliot were very close when they were kids. She used to trail after Elliot every day. Lorelai responded graciously, that happened in the past when we were kids. I don't quite recall it anymore. Yes. Lorelai was quite a wild child when she was young, Kendra added. The woman who had brought up the topic suddenly caught herself as she glanced anxiously in Anastasia's direction before lifting her teacup and smiling awkwardly. "I was just mentioning this in passing." Harriet immediately tried to lighten the mood. Elliot has always regarded Lorelai as his younger sister. He was too lonely when he was a kid. Anastasia realized that the crowd intentionally avoided any mention of this topic because they must be afraid that she would overthink the situation. From her memory, Lorelai's father was one of the extended descendants of the Presgrave family lineage, and they were quite a well-to-do family. As such, logically, although Lorelai and Harriet had the same last name, Lorelai was completely unrelated by blood to Harriet's line of the Presgraves. As such, this became quite a sensitive topic. "I heard that the bridesmaids in the wedding are some of the younger girls in the family. It's quite unfortunate that I didn't come back in time to be one of the bridesmaids," Lorelai instantly mentioned, quite regretfully. "It's all right for not being on time to be one of the bridesmaids. You can join in when it's time to pitch the bridal bouquet. I'm looking forward to attending your wedding celebration next," Harriet comforted her. At that point, everyone started to chime in. "Yeah. We're all looking forward to attending your wedding celebration." Just then, Anastasia had the urge to go to the toilet. Lorelai instantly got up too. "Mrs. Presgrave, I'll keep you company." "Sure, let's go." Anastasia and Lorelai went off together in the direction of the toilet. Lorelai noticed then that there was a piece of leaf that had fallen on Anastasia's hair, and she instantly voiced out, "Mrs. Presgrave, hold still for a moment. There is a piece of fallen leaf on your hair." Anastasia stood still at the mention of that, and Lorelai affectionately reached over to remove the leaf quite gently from Anastasia's hair. "Done. I've removed the leaf. Thanks." Anastasia was quite grateful for the help. "You're welcome. You're the young mistress of the entire Presgrace family, so everyone respects you. The same goes to me." Lorelai looked at Anastasia sincerely. Anastasia knew the Presgrave family rule, and she was initially quite astonished by it, but now she had finally accepted this completely. "I hope we can get along better as friends," Anastasia told her. "I want to be your friend too. I'm not sure why, but I have a feeling we'll hit it off right away." Lorelai complimented her on her beauty, saying, "You are so beautiful." "And you're just as gorgeous yourself," Anastasia responded. "People claim that beautiful women tend to fight with each other. I don't think this statement is accurate since we can be really great friends," Lorelai said. "Yeah," Anastasia exclaimed, nodding in agreement. Anastasia went back to her villa after the tea party. Elliot took Jared out to sea for fishing, and they would not be back until later in the afternoon. It was a great chance for her to finish making preparations for the wedding. When Anastasia was getting ready to take a nap in the afternoon, Adriana came in and said, "Madam, someone named Katrina wants to see you. Please invite her in," Anastasia said after being slightly startled. Soon, Katrina entered in her sexy attire. "I hope I didn't bother you, Anastasia." She greeted her warmly, and when she looked at Anastasia's luxurious home, she felt a little envious. "Not at all. Did you have fun on the island? When is your brother going to come?" Anastasia asked. "He said that he would arrive no later than tomorrow morning." Katrina sat on the couch and whispered on purpose, "Is your husband not at the villa?" Anastasia responded, "He went out to the sea for fishing." Katrina sighed with relief. "That's good." As soon as she finished speaking, she took out her phone and brought up the video clip she had taken in the morning. "Anastasia, take a look at this. I'm doing it for you." This footage was captured by pure coincidence. Anastasia then took the phone, which showed a video recording of Lorelai and Elliot having a lovely conversation. She had never seen a woman having such a pleasant chat with Elliot before. Since she's a Presgrave, you could perhaps assume she's Elliot's sister. Please delete this video clip. She returned the phone to Katrina. A family member of the Presgraves? After pausing for a few while, Katrina said, "It seems like I'm overcomplicating things." After that, she deleted the video clip from her phone. Anastasia, I need to ask you a question. Do any of the guests here have the last name of Weiss? Would you mind introducing the two of us? I don't know young Master Weiss. He's Elliot's guest, Anastasia replied with the shake of her head because she could tell what Katrina was thinking. It seemed to Katrina that Anastasia was harboring a grudge and refused to make the introductions. She sulked and remarked after that, "Still holding me responsible for things that happened in the past? Under those circumstances, you are indeed not suitable to be with my brother. I'm done talking about the past now. I am grateful to your brother for his kindness, which I will always cherish." Anastasia sipped from the teacup in an attempt to get Katrina to leave the room. Katrina took the hint and stood up. "Then, I'll stop bothering you. I'm sorry for what went wrong in the past. Don't hold anything against me. I hope that when you become the young mistress of the Presgrave family, you will continue to help us." Her attitude changed quickly toward those in positions of power to her advantage. "I'll take care of your brother at the bourgeois jewelry atelier where he works," Anastasia responded, indicating that she would support Katrina's brother rather than her. Even if Katrina was still resentful, she couldn't do anything but apologize to Anastasia with a smile. "That's awesome. I no longer have to worry about his future." She left the room. Anastasia held the teacup in her palm, but her mind was preoccupied with the video. Elliot and Lorelei were childhood friends who grew up together. She learned from old Madame Presgrave that it was best to keep her feelings and anger hidden and not show them. In the future, she would need to deal with the people and affairs of the whole Presgrave family, and she should have the most faith in her husband. She did not want to suspect anything and trust in her husband, and there was nothing more important than trusting in someone you care about deeply. Anastasia decided not to nap. She sat down in front of the genealogy book to read about the lineage history of the Presgrave family. By writing down important information, old Madame Presgrave helped her to remember the influences and relationships of each family. After looking at it for a while, she fell asleep on the couch because reading the book was too exhausting. When Elliot got home in the evening, he saw her sleeping on the couch. She held the book close to her chest and had her eyebrows slightly raised. He thought it was both disheartening and funny. He sat quietly next to her and held her to his chest when he saw she was sleeping in an awkward position against the couch. As she slept in his arms, he leaned down and kissed her on the forehead. "How did the fishing go?" Anastasia asked as she smiled and gently opened her lovely, dreamy eyes to catch his gaze. Elliot curled his lips into a grin, obviously pleased with the outcome. "You may cat the salmon your husband caught tonight. Did Jared have fun?" "He was really happy, and as soon as he got off the boat, he fell asleep." Anastasia also believed that her son would have fun. Elliot took the genealogy book out of her hands and told her, "Don't read it if you don't want to. Let me take care of the family household matters." She shook her head. "No. You are managing the external affairs, and I will be handling the family household matters." This has warmed Elliot's heart since his wife had already considered ways to lessen his responsibility. While stroking her hair, he said, "Don't worry too much." "Oh, yeah. I spoke with a girl from the Presgraves today. Her name is Lorelei, and I heard that you used to play with her when you were younger. Both of you must be very close to each other." With a grin on her face, Anastasia asked, "Sweetheart, we've known each other since we were children. However, she is like my sister to me in my heart. Other than that, we have no other kind of bond." Elliot's eyes widened with anxiety as he cupped her face with his hand. Really? She raised her voice unintentionally to recall, you do not seem to be related to her by blood. What if she is interested in you? When he heard that, he focused his gaze on her and declared firmly, have faith in me, Mrs. Presgrave. I won't even look at another woman but you and my son. Anastasia raised her head to kiss his cheek and said with satisfaction, okay, I take your word for it. Elliot had decided to avoid having close contact with Lorelai in the future to avoid his wife's jealousy, and he didn't want Anastasia to misinterpret things. Lorelai was sitting on her villa's balcony, looking through a magazine and admiring the jewelry in it. She was still shocked. It seemed that the future young mistress of the Presgrave family was both beautiful and very talented. Villa number 58. Today, Sophia was very well behaved. Besides checking her phone, she only went downstairs for her food. As Arthur was very particular about what he ate, he had a personal chef to prepare their meals. As tomorrow was the wedding, she wanted to catch a glimpse of the bride and groom. As soon as she left the table, she saw the man on the opposite side raising his eyebrow to ask, do you have a formal gown for tomorrow? A gown? She blinked, wondering as to where she would get a gown. I don't have a gown. All I have are the dresses I wear most of the time, Sophia answered honestly. You are accompanying me to the wedding tomorrow as my partner, so make sure not to embarrass me. Once again, Arthur made his statement. She responded with any sentiments, if you think I'm an embarrassment, just let me stay in the villa. He had already made her his partner against her will, and now he wanted her to dress nicely. His tendency to humiliate her was quite remarkable, so she left him and went upstairs. Arthur frowned. This woman had nothing in resemblance to a maid, and despite the fact that he had not even requested her to be humble, she couldn't even fulfill the simple request of being obedient. It seems like he'd have to discipline her after the wedding. It was a sunny morning too, and the day everyone had been waiting for finally came. Ah! A low voice coming from the bathroom's direction was heard. What's the problem? What happened? Elliot rushed into the bathroom. Look at what you've done. I told you last night, Anastasia glared at him in her nightgown while standing in front of the mirror. After hearing it, he chuckled and smiled widely. His lovely wife screamed, and it was not because of anything threatening, but it was due to a bite mark on her neck. All right. Although he was the one who wasn't paying attention last night, which led to the concerns that she was having, who could blame him when his wife was so delectable? You still find it funny. You're a jerk. How can I meet people today? Anastasia demanded as she went up to him and softly whacked him. Elliot said with a mischievous smirk, let me take a look. Then, she pulled her nightgown down a bit to reveal her lovely complexion. Her skin was unusually fair, which gave rise to a bright crimson bite mark. It's adorable. Let the makeup artist draw a flower over it. Elliot's gaze became more intense as he took a step closer to her the following second. Anastasia took a step back as she saw him. About to kiss her and said, no more kisses. He refused, and with a dominating look on her small, fair face, he pulled her over, saying, You are my wife, so why can't I kiss you? Anastasia felt both affectionately warm and bashful. This man had been acting in intimate behavior throughout the morning without giving any thought to the moment of this day. Don't cause any trouble. The makeup artist is still waiting for me. In her embarrassment, she tried to push him away, but he caressed her face and kissed her before adding, Okay, let's talk about it tonight. She pushed him out of the room, and then she worriedly looked at the mark in the mirror. Because it was so humiliating, this was not something that should not be shown to any random people. The thing was that she was about to have her makeup done, and there was no way that she could hide the bite mark. She had no choice but to keep her fingers crossed that the makeup artist would be able to conceal it. The crew consisting of the top makeup artists had already been waiting to serve her. The makeup artist was surprised to see that the bride's fair skin was already in such terrific form. Even when she was not wearing makeup, her face was delicate and smooth with well-defined facial features. Such a beautiful face. Mason had just arrived at Katrina's villa. He had a lot of work since he had just started at the company. Katrina could not help as she saw her brother peering in the direction of the banquet hall, mocking him by saying, "Are you upset with me for preventing you from marrying Anastasia back then, Mason? Quit talking crap. I don't have a future with her." He looked at her. Katrina sighed and said, "Anastasia has become more beautiful and elegant, and she will look more like a rich young mistress. Our family situation already doesn't match up with hers now," she said. "Not to worry, Mason. I have asked her, and she said that she will look out for you at work in the future, because she owes you." Mason told his sister, "Kat, don't talk about the past in front of her anymore. It will only traumatize her." Katrina yelled, "No way. I have to remind her often that it was you who never left her side when things were hard for her. And that it is also because of you that her child survived. You are not only her savior, but also Elliot's savior. Quit it. I just want to be Anastasia's friend now." Mason muttered, and his face went red with anger. "Am I wrong? Elliot's kid is still alive thanks to you, and he should reward us generously and make us all rich." Katrina couldn't help but spat. "If you bring this up again, I won't forgive you," Mason warned her. After he was done telling her, he went outside. While Katrina was leaning against the door, her eyes were clearly focused on some kind of plot and scheme. Since Mason was not keen to pursue the matter, it was likely that she would demand the Presgraves to settle this debt on his behalf. Francis could only attend his daughter's wedding today because of his work commitments. He left early in the morning to see his grandson since he wanted Anastasia to inherit his business and company, and this would also be passed on to his grandson too. He didn't want to search for the next apparent heir since Naomi had deeply broken his heart. He planned to spend the rest of his life with his daughter and grandchild. As he had a wonderful son-in-law, he did not have to worry about retiring. Nigel was one of the best men today, and he seemed lively in the early morning. The other two best men were from the Presgrave family, with one of them being Jacob. He was able to attend the wedding since his grandfather was Mr. Presgrave's closest cousin, and as such earned him a spot at the reception. Louis, Lorelei's brother, was the other best man. The three best men were partnered with the three young ladies from the Presgrave family, making it an entire affair of the Presgraves. "Grandpa." Jared embraced Francis. "Jared, let me take a closer look at you. Oh, you've gotten taller again, and in future, do strive to be just as successful as your father was." Francis pondered, "I'm going to keep an eye on your development." "Yeah. I will definitely be as capable as Daddy," Jared answered with confidence. His name was still registered as Jared Tillman, but after the wedding, he would have his name legally changed to Jared Presgrave. Francis' eyes were slightly reddened and tears were welling up. After all the unfortunate events that occurred, he was still blessed with a charming little grandson as well as a kind and devoted daughter. "Grandpa is bringing you to play around." Francis led Jared out after he was done talking. At Villa number 58, Sophia was excited today as well. She rose from bed earlier to view the scenery from her balcony. At that very moment, there was a tap on her door. When she went to open the door, a woman greeted her and said, "I'm the manager of the concierge department, Miss Goodwin. Your gowns have arrived, so please come down and make your selection." Sophia suddenly thought of what Arthur had said and never expected him to surprise her by getting her a gown. Then, she nodded and went down with them. She saw a hanger cart with more than 10 evening gowns on it as someone pushed the cart down the hall. They were stunning gowns that were definitely made by renowned fashion designers. Sophia reached out to decide her choice one at a time since she had her own personal style and color preferences too. The gown that she chose was a stunning light champagne color with a U-shaped neckline and 2 strands of light veil covering the shoulders. Such a design would showcase a woman's gorgeous collarbone and shoulder lines. As for the waistline design, it was matched with a light fabric skirt ornament that shimmered with tiny star-like glitters. The whole combination in itself looked stunning. "I'll take this one." "Yes, the makeup artist will be here in half an hour to do your makeup." "Thank you." Sophia also picked a pair of high-heeled shoes to match her attire. She had no idea Arthur had planned such treatment for her to keep her from embarrassing him. He had confused her because he could have prevented her from attending the wedding if he believed she'd embarrass him. Is he trying to put me down? In the bridal dressing room, Anastasia changed into her wedding gown. It was a French court dress with an elegant off-shoulder design. The gown was entirely adorned with handmade diamonds upon closer inspection, which made it a stunning masterpiece. Each of the star-shaped diamonds adorning her thin waist was beautiful and enchanting in its own way. The gown's hemline was stylish without losing its magnificence since it used elements that were inspired by cultures. "What do you think of the makeup, Mrs. Presgrave?" the makeup artist asked. The mirror reflected a gorgeous woman who radiated grace and endearing qualities. She was absolutely breathtaking. Anastasia tilted her neck and nodded, "Excellent." The foundation that the makeup artist used on her had concealed the bite mark that was on her neck. It had been concealed for a while. She had a little flush on her cheeks. At this moment, 3 people who were properly dressed for the occasion, Anastasia's bridesmaids, approached Anastasia. One of them, who was 2 to 3 years younger than her, praised, "Miss Anastasia, you are extremely beautiful. Only a wonderful beauty like you, Miss Anastasia, is worthy of our uncle." Anastasia tried to restrain herself from laughing every time she heard these remarks. Elliot was treated like an uncle to the group of young members of the Presgrave family when he was merely 29 years old, whereas she was regarded as their aunt at the age of 25. "You're all very gorgeous today, too," she praised. The 3 of them were all of the same age and had the same type of makeup while they were all dressed in purple. At that moment, someone walked in with a smile and said, "Mrs. Presgrave." "Miss Lorelei," the 3 girls said as they turned around to greet her. "Go and grab a bite," Lorelei said to them. The 3 girls left since they knew their place. As Lorelei looked at Anastasia, her eyes were filled with awe and envy. She was familiar with everything about Anastasia, including Anastasia's childhood, but she had no idea about the power that transformed this girl into who she was now. Anastasia's calmness, elegance, and self-confidence at the time seemed to be Elliot's special preference for her, and Lorelei thought that the confidence came from the child they shared. "You're breathtaking. Seeing you makes me want to find love right away," Lorelei sighed. "What kind of person do you want your partner to be?" Anastasia asked, a curious expression on her face. "I haven't met a man who makes my heart skip a beat," Lorelei said as she smiled and shook her head. "I hope you find your soulmate soon," Anastasia said sincerely to her. "Thank you," Lorelei responded as she reached for Anastasia's wedding gown. Anastasia accepted Lorelei's kindness. Anastasia looked at the time after Lorelei had finished arranging her dress and said, "In 1 hour's time, it will be an auspicious time. I heard that the guests have arrived. The island will be bustling today." At this point, steady footsteps could be heard from the stairs. The door was then pushed open to reveal Elliot entering with a black suit. Instead of his usual tie, he was wearing a black bow tie, and the dark sapphire cufflinks exuded an exceptional and extravagant aura, making him more mature and attractive. He looked best with his hair slicked back, and his hair was combed behind his head. His sharp facial features made him appear charming and fashionable. Elliot was surprised to see Lorelei, but his gaze was drawn affectionately to his wife. His eyes were wide with surprise as he looked up and down at Anastasia. Anastasia became shy when she was stared at, but she was also drawn to his handsome appearance today. The two of them were so in love that they forgot there was a third party beside them. Lorelei looked at them before slightly lowering her gaze to hide the light in her eyes. She then pursed her red lips tightly, as if trying to conceal something. "Lorelei, may I speak with my briefly?" Elliot inquired. Wife only then did she realize she was being a third wheel. "I won't bother you two then," she said with a smile. He wrapped his strong arm around Anastasia's waist and hugged her tightly, bringing her beautiful face close to his eyes. "I thought you were normally beautiful, but I didn't expect you to be even more stunning," he added, his voice hoarse and his eyes shining with admiration. Anastasia also thought he was attractive and captivating, but she didn't expect him to be drop-dead gorgeous today. "Mr. Presgrave, I'll be Mrs. Presgrave soon. Do you have anything to say to me?" She wrapped her arms around his neck to smell the cool and charming breath on his body. "Congratulations, Mrs. Presgrave." Elliot's lips curled into a deep smile. "And congratulations, Mr. Presgrave." He pressed his lips against hers as she smiled. He couldn't help but kiss her because she was so lovely. Anastasia's original red lips were lovely, but Elliot moisturized them and enhanced her beauty. Lorelei walked out of the villa and into the field where three girls approached her, one of whom addressed her as Miss Lorelei. She didn't seem to hear it because she was lost in her thoughts, and the three girls couldn't help but stare at each other. "What is Miss Lorelei thinking about so deeply that she is unaware of our approach?" Lorelei moved toward an open space. Her eyes turned red as she looked out the window at the guests, as if she was filled with sadness. "Lorelei, you have one duty that you must fulfill. Your life can never be yours if you don't fulfill it," said Lorelei's father. "Dad, why am I not allowed to go back to the country? I want to see him. I miss him." "No, you can't. You must quell your feelings and bide your time to appear in front of him. Lorelei, he's going to get married. You should come back to the country to attend his wedding." Lorelei closed her eyes as tears streamed down her cheeks. Money was the root of all evil. Had the Presgrave family not amassed such abundant wealth, there would be no ideas about them. Who wouldn't turn into a green-eyed monster when Elliot alone owned a fortune that was equivalent to that of a small country? Still, there were strict family rules that restrained the Presgraves. As though the rulemaker had been through the affliction of being surrounded by voracious family and friends, he had drawn up a customary system that was passed on generation by generation. In order to avoid complicated situations and power struggles, working in the Presgrave group was off-limits to the Presgraves. Therefore, it was reasonable to say that Elliot possessed every penny the family had, whereas the others could only establish their own business. They couldn't enjoy one bit of the money that the Presgrave group brought in. Even though they had achieved success in every industry thanks to the family's influence, a shining star was undeniably pale in comparison to the bright moon. The greedy frog in them had been fed little by little as the days went by, hence the strong desire to own everything. Like the avaricious ministers of the country, they were approaching closer and closer to the throne to take over it and hog everything. Nonetheless, the family and the family honor had always been one. The comprehensive system had included rules that could protect the other members of the family. Thus, they were never neglected despite the rigid rules. It was Elliot's wedding, where all of the elderly family members, the greedy snakes, were present, and beneath the harmonious facade were calculative schemes. In a white suit, Jared, the little prince, dashed into Anastasia's makeup room. He hugged his mother before sizing her up. "Mommy, you look so pretty." Due to the train of the wedding dress, she wasn't able to return the hug, so she crouched down to stroke his head. Her eyes were smitten with warmth as she gazed at the face that resembled Elliot. "Jared, are you happy?" "Totally. Daddy and Mommy can love me together forever." There was no reason for him to be upset, as he wished to have a younger sibling accompany him. "Yeah, we'll love you forever." Anastasia's eyes reddened because of the sudden sadness. Is Jared going to be like Elliot in the future? When the time comes, will he be crushed by the weight of the responsibilities he has to bear as the head of the family? She thought Jared could grow up happily without worries and marry someone he loved in the future. Given his intelligence and capability, it would be a no-brainer for him to get a decent job like a doctor or lawyer. Yet, those little shoulders of his were already bearing the weight now. Perturbed, Anastasia pulled him into her arms before giving him a kiss on the head. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Jared sensed the tinge of sorrow in her. "It's nothing. Just let me hug you for a while. I haven't hugged you these last few days." She gently caressed his hair. Before long, a staff member came in to inform them that it was about time. "Mommy, I'm going to be the page boy with a flower girl." "That's so lovely of you." Anastasia pecked his cheek. Right then, two graceful women walked into the room. It was Kendra and Elliot's grandaunt, Elira. "Mrs. Pressgrave, it's time. Allow us to escort you there."
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.